When the murder of a CEO shocked an entire community, it would soon be revealed that the alleged killer not only had a long criminal record, but had also attacked a couple only 3 days prior. This couple survived and identified the suspect, but police had never released what occurred to the public. No one was aware this monster was on the loose until a life was taken. You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke Makenna, and today's case is a very recent one. However, when it came to how the police handled this situation, there are differing theories because the police really didn't allow the public the knowledge of what was occurring and that this couple had survived. And so no one was on the lookout when this murder to this very young girl happened. So leave me what you believe down below, but first off, I want to thank our sponsor for allowing me the opportunity to continue to tell these victim stories. Skin can be really important, but it's not just the vanity of it either. It has a lot to do with your health. And skincare can be so intimidating, but Geology makes it so easy to craft the perfect routine for you. In fact, none of that is on your shoulders. Geology does it with a short little quiz. They have simple and effective ingredients, and it comes straight to your door. There's no employees in the beauty salon asking you a million different questions, which is why I prefer Geology. And I absolutely adore their water gel moisturizer. It's my absolute favorite. It's going to be a winter must-have. So I highly recommend Geology. If you are like me and you don't like having to put together a routine, you're so overwhelmed and you just want to take care of your skin, Geology actually wants to give my subscribers 70% off of their award-winning skincare trial set with the code Brooke70, or you can scan the QR code on the screen. On top of that, they're giving you an additional offer of up to 30% off one of their skin, hair, or body add-on products when you add it to your trial. So I appreciate Geology for sponsoring. Now let's get back to the story. So just last month, in September of 2023, the news broke of the brutal murder of a CEO. Pava LaPere was the founder and chief executive of a startup in Mount Vernon, Baltimore called EcoMap Technologies. Basically, they would curate data for businesses, nonprofit, and education ecosystems to make it easier to access and interpret. Pava was only 26 years old, and she had actually started the company at only 21 in her dorm room at Johns Hopkins University. She had planned to be a doctor before all of this, but then she found her true calling, and she was actually featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 back in 2013 for her social impact. She was said to be the type of woman who you would want to mentor your daughter. Pava actually described herself as a CEO who believes in hyperlocal, ecosystem-based economic development to create a more equitable future for all communities. Friends said that she was very optimistic and smiling, and that she'd started her company to help others. They said that not only was she a brilliant, diligent leader, but she was also kind, curious, and inclusive. She was a bright, shining star, and she even often mentored students at her alma mater and encouraged the college to provide more ways that, the students could become entrepreneurs like her. She was a force of nature trying to change the world, and she wanted to disrupt the boys' network of the tech industry. In fact, her company had committed to a 50-50% goal of having half women and half people of color employed. Pava was said to take care of others far more than she ever took care of herself. In fact, one of her friends asked her if she was taking time for herself, and she said that she was working on those things, but that once she became a millionaire, she'd be able to help so many more people. However, she was reported missing on the early morning hours of Saturday, September 23rd. When investigators arrived at her apartment, they found no signs of forced entry into her actual apartment, and only hours later, around 11:30 a.m., a body would be found on the roof of her apartment building. Pava was partially clothed, and officers believed that she had blunt force trauma to the head, the face, and her body. Now, investigators would find a brick, buttons, a broken hair clip, pants, a pair of red shoes, and 3 teeth near her body. This was quickly ruled a homicide, and the autopsy determined that her cause of death was strangulation and blunt force trauma. Now, at a police press conference on Sunday, September 24th, the police commissioner, Richard Worley, informed the public that there had been a warrant out for their suspect's arrest. He was wanted for first-degree murder. The man who was wanted, he was a 32-year-old named Jason Billingsley. Now, they had come to identify him through the apartment surveillance footage.
At this time, we believe and we know he probably is armed and dangerous. We ask anyone who may have seen him or knows his whereabouts to contact police immediately by calling 911. We implore residents to be aware of your surroundings at all times. This individual will kill and he will rape. He will do anything he can to cause harm. So please be aware of your surroundings.
But the facts as they present themselves currently make this imperative for us to be alert and to alert the public about what's going on. Our number one goal here is to keep everyone in Baltimore safe.
You see, the night before Pava was found, so that Friday, September 22nd, Pava would be seen in the lobby of her apartment building, which was in the 300 block of West Franklin Street. She not only lived there, but she worked there. So she was in the lobby wearing a green top, a black and white sweater, which was draped over her arms with red pants and red shoes. Now, she was sitting on the couch, presumably doing some sort of work, when she noticed a man outside waving at her through the glass. Now, this man was waving her over, so Pava actually went over and she ended up opening the door for this man and letting him inside. Now, surveillance footage showed that they briefly spoke for a while before getting into the elevator together, but surveillance footage found that about an hour later at 11:08 p.m., the same man would be wearing a gray hoodie and appeared to be scrambling for an exit as he wiped his hands on his pants. And then he left the building. Now, the Baltimore mayor, who was Brandon Scott, would say that he had the privilege to know Pava and that her killer cared about nothing other than harming people.
Pava was a very young, talented, devoted Baltimorean, someone that I had the opportunity to get to know over the past few years, who would help anybody that she would see. And to have that life cut short by someone who has no care about anything other than harming people is something that should sit deep in the stomachs of all Baltimoreans tonight. Our city, as you heard from in our BPD, will not rest until we have him into custody. We are working with every law enforcement partner that we have to make sure that we bring this individual, who quite frankly shouldn't have been out on the streets in the first place, into custody and allow the BPD to turn him over to the state's attorney in the justice system. Our BPD investigators pour everything that they have into each and every investigation that they do, but we're always going to need the community to help us. I want to continue to say that these types of tragedies serve as a call to action for all of us to do more for our city, to make sure that we're building the better, safer Baltimore that we all want.
How frustrated are you that yet we have another murder in Baltimore where this is a case of a repeat violent offender who's committed an act?
Extremely frustrated. I mean, you and I talk about this, unfortunately, all too often, right? When myself, the police commissioner, the state's attorney, we have to stand up here and talk about someone's life cut down short by someone who should still be in prison, right? And this is why you consistently hear from us, those who are on the front lines of this work, those who have to talk with those grieving families to get other parts of the system to understand the human side of it, that these cases impact people's lives for the eternity. And we have to make sure that folks are held accountable in every single way, because we are tired of talking about the same people committing the same kind of crimes over and over again.
Now, the same day of the press conference that Sunday, a neighbor of Pava claimed that she believed that this man had returned back to the crime scene. She had been putting the code into the building so she could go inside the apartment where she lived when she noticed a man behind her, and she got a really bad feeling. And so she asked him what he was doing, and he said that he was looking for another building, though he was just kind of standing there. So she stalled, not wanting to put in the code and going inside, and finally he did leave. leave. Now, a manhunt was ongoing for this killer. Then investigators received information that would give them a location, because on Monday, September 25th, 2 days since Pava's body was found, a tip came in from a woman who described herself as Jason Billingsley's friend. She said that he used her home to shower and sleep in often, and that her handgun, which was a Glock 19 Gen 5, was missing. So the woman said she allegedly met up with Jason during this time that, Pava's body was found, that there was this manhunt for him, and asked him about the stolen gun. And he allegedly had many different stories about where the gun was, but she decided to go and file stolen handgun charges against him that day. When she reported that this handgun was stolen by Jason Billingsley, the police actually only knew of this prior crime that Jason was involved in, and not yet about Pava's murder and his connection to it. At the next press conference on Tuesday, September 26th, BPD announced that Jason was wanted in connection to an attempted murder in a case that was kept quiet until Pava's murder. And they also said that they were reviewing all of the cases for the past year for connections to Jason Billingsley. They also said that they were actively attempting to apprehend the suspect, but he was not yet in custody. Because this wasn't Jason's first run-in with the law. His criminal record showed that back in 2009, when he was 18, he was arrested for the robbery and the assault of a man for $10. He pled guilty to first-degree assault, and he was given 5 years in prison. However, 4.5 of those were suspended, so he only really had 6 months in prison and then 2 years of supervised probation after this. However, the next year, while he was still on probation, he was accused of punching his ex-girlfriend in the face before pinning her down and stealing her phone. He pled guilty to second-degree assault and violating his probation, and he was given a 2-year sentence at the time, and he was released in 2013. However, in 2013, 3 months after he was released from prison, a woman came forward to say that Jason had approached her after she had a fight with her boyfriend and she was walking the streets alone, and he asked her if she needed somewhere to stay, and she did. So when they got to his home, he said that he had locked the keys inside, and she actually needed to climb through the window to open the door for him. She did this, and that's when he told her he wanted to have sex. And so she said she wanted to leave. And that is when Jason hit her in the face, started choking her, and threatened to shoot her if she didn't do what he said. Jason then asked her if she had any STDs, and she said that she did. So then at knife point, he forced her to perform oral acts on him, and he then told her to leave. He then pled guilty to first-degree sexual assault, and he was facing life plus 68 years. However, in 2015, he was only sentenced to 30 years. Yet under the plea agreement, all but 14 of those years were suspended. And then Judge Emanuel Brown said that the court was not satisfied with the plea deal, yet still, he only served 7 years instead of the 14 he was supposed to before being released in October of 2022. He was released 7 years early, and then he was registered as a sex offender, but the reason he had been freed early, this was under Maryland's diminution credit system that allows inmates to reduce their term through good behaviors such as, educational courses and being a decent inmate. This is often used to reduce overcrowding in prisons. However, even though he had a very violent past and, sexual assault was a part of that, he was a sexual predator, he was still eligible for this. Now, Jason's alleged sister Jasmine has posted a podcast episode on her TNJ podcast revolving around her brother, titling it The Man Behind the Monster. Jasmine wanted to tell her side of the story on her own platform, and I will have the full podcast linked below, but I will give you some points that I found quite interesting. So Jasmine explained that Jason was her younger brother and they had another older sister and brother, but their older brother is now deceased. Jasmine remembers growing up in this drug house, and when Jasmine was 5, all of the siblings were put into foster care and separated. Jasmine said that this actually saved her, and she said her foster parents were very loving. But Jasmine said that Jason had a completely different experience and was moved from home to home by CPS and would go to different group homes, and he even allegedly confided in her during their visits that he was sexually abused by some adult male figures. Now, Jasmine said that as adults, Jason lived with his biological mother when he wasn't in prison, and he would do okay for a while. However, she said that he started to focus more on women's attention, and this is where the problems started. He was dating 2 girls at once, and when they figured it out, he began to blame his family for telling these girls, even though it was really because these 2 girls worked together and figured it out. But Jasmine said that Jason began to threaten them. Jasmine saw him in a whole different light after this. Then their older brother would be shot 10 times on the streets where he was said to work, and he succumbed to his wounds. And around the same time, Jasmine would hear from a woman that Jason had raped her. Now, Jason told Jasmine that she was just a sex worker and when he was high at the time, but that she got mad that he didn't pay and started saying that he raped her. Now, the day of their older brother's funeral, the 3 grieving siblings went outside when the police approached Jason and began to arrest him. Jason was said to be extremely calm, and it scared Jasmine. She remembers saying he did rape that girl. Yet her family still didn't believe that he was capable of something like this. Now, from what I could gather, this is believed to be the case that occurred in 2013, where Jason would only end up serving 7 years, the same case that he was released back into society after in 2022. But Jasmine was said to cut off Jason and their biological mother after this because their mother refused to listen to Jasmine on the truth about her son and always took his side. After this was all revealed about the suspect who was currently on the run, Mayor Scott said rapists should not be let out early, that when you rape someone, no matter if it's someone's daughter or their wife, they should not get out early, period, for that kind of offense. He then called Jason Billingsley a sociopath. It was also found that Jason had recently been listed as non-compliant for the sex offender registry, and he hadn't registered in September. He hadn't met with anybody during that time. Jason Billingsley's mother, Scarlett, would come forward to the news saying that she had spoken to him over the phone during that period of time after Pava was found, and he said he was okay, and that she had also been texting him telling him to turn himself in because they were going to kill him if he didn't. But Scarlett said that Jason was trying to turn his life around when he got out of prison a year prior, and that she was shocked that he would do this.
I screamed. I cried. I can't understand what happened that he would do something like that. So sorry that this happened to her. And if my son did it, I really apologize because I don't know what happened to make him do that.
Now, a vigil was held for Pava LaPere where friends and family spoke about what an amazing soul she was.
She was the definition of daddy's little girl. She had me wrapped and still does. She turned from being daddy's little girl into being a girl boss. And she treated me the same way.
But I can hear her telling me, you gotta press on. And so the world is looking at us and saying, nope, this is what happens in Baltimore. But I'm telling you, she saw things that no one else saw. And she saw something in Baltimore.
But on Wednesday, September 27th, the suspect was arrested at the Mark train station in Maryland, and the SWAT team took him into custody around 11:10 p.m. He was said to be cooperative, and there was a press conference that announced this to the public, and this terrified community finally were feeling a bit of relief.
We are able to capture this violent criminal without incident or further loss of life. I know this arrest does not bring back Pava LaPere or take away the heels of the many victims of Mr. Billingsley. But my hope is at least we can give a sense of closure to the city of Baltimore, the victims of all of his crimes and all of their families. As a matter of fact, we had the press conference the other day about Miss LaPere's death. We were delayed that press conference because we were within about 88 meters of capturing the suspect, but he was able to elude our capture.
And if and when the grand jury gives us the indictments, my office will file life without the possibility of parole. Our hope and goal is if this individual is found guilty in a court of law, that this individual will never get out to see the light of day again and to ever hurt any of the citizens of our fine city ever again.
But what was this other case that Jason Billingsley was involved in besides Pava's murder that everybody was talking about? that hadn't been told to them until now. Well, before Pava was murdered, Jason had a warrant for his arrest for arson. Now, it appeared that he had been on a week-long crime spree in Baltimore, including Pava's murder. He had eluded capture many times. You see, he had been identified as the suspect in an arson investigation where 2 victims suffered multiple injuries just 3 days prior to when Pava was killed. On September 19th, the police were called to the 800 block of Edmondson Avenue, which was about a 7-minute walk from Pava's apartment. And the apartment building was actually on fire, and a man and a woman were found critically injured after being pulled from the apartment's basement where they lived. They were pulled from the windows by the neighbors. A 5-year-old was also said to be found with serious injuries, and they were all rushed to the hospital when a neighbor informed the police that the man who had been pulled from this window was handcuffed, his feet were taped, his legs were bleeding, and he was said to have burns on his chest, his arms, his feet, and he was going to have to undergo surgery to graft skin from his thighs to help with the burn marks. Now, an arrest warrant was filed within hours because these surviving victims were able to identify the suspect. This man was known to them, and he worked in the building as a maintenance man. However, in this arrest warrant, there was no mention of the victims being bound or that it could have been more than just an arson attempt. It was initially reported as arson, but a rape investigation was now underway. After obtaining a search warrant for this apartment, investigators found a backpack near the crime scene which was thought to be a rape kit. It involved a knife, rolls of duct tape, strips of duct tape with hair still stuck to them, silver handcuffs, a gas can, bleach container, a lighter, condom wrappers, as well as a black and gray Adidas sweatshirt. Surveillance footage from around this apartment also caught someone with a face mask on pointing the gun at the female victim before entering the apartment. Then, Jason was seen without a mask wearing this Adidas sweatshirt that was later found in the backpack near the crime scene. Not only did they have surveillance footage of Jason Billingsley, they had victims who identified the man as someone they knew who was the maintenance man, but the public was not notified about who this man was. Court documents revealed that statements from survivors were made, and the female victim claimed that that night of September 19th, she heard loud banging on the door, and that the man outside identified himself as the maintenance man. And so he began kicking the door, and then he kicked it in and pointed the gun at her. She stated that she was then duct taped as well as her boyfriend who was there, and she was raped before her throat was slashed. And at this time, liquid was poured all over her and her partner, and she didn't realize that this was gas. They were then set on fire. Now, this female has not been identified publicly, and it's said that that's because she does not want to be. However, the male victim did come forward to tell his story, and this was found to be 26-year-old Jonte Gilmore, who did an interview with the Baltimore Banner. And Jonte said that on the 19th, he and his alleged girlfriend were listening to music, and then they fell asleep. Then he actually would later find out from his girlfriend that she had woken up to this banging on the door. He was still asleep during this time. And then he was saying that the police statements about how this man kicked in the door was incorrect, that that's not what his girlfriend said, that his girlfriend actually opened up the door to look outside, but no one was there. And then she heard a voice shouting from the top of the stairs, "Maintenance, you have flood in the kitchen." And so she decided to go up the stairs to see what was going on. As she headed up the stairs, that's when his girlfriend would say that she was grabbed by the hair and thrown to the ground, and she was hit in the face by a gun several different times. That's when this man began to yell at her, "Where's the money at? And who else is downstairs?" Now, her ankles as well as her head were then covered in duct tape. She was taken back into her apartment. And this is when Jonte said that he woke up because he felt something touching his back and he believed that it was his girlfriend, so he rolled over to have a gun in his face. The man then said, "Where that money at?" While Jonte tried to process this, he said that the man was threatening, "If you try anything stupid, I'm going to rape your B." Jonte was then handcuffed, and his face and his ankles were duct taped as well. And the music was turned on full volume as his girlfriend was raped next to him. The girlfriend told this man that she had to pee, and that's when he forced her to relieve herself on Jonte. They were duct taped, being held captive, and she was being sexually assaulted, and there was nothing her boyfriend could do about it. They were both going through such a traumatic experience, and the man then left the room for a moment. And Jonte would ask his girlfriend if there was one person or two. She would say that it was the same man she had seen mowing the grass, that she knew who he was. He was the maintenance man. He was telling her to be quiet so that this man didn't know that they knew who he was. But she would then ask Jonte if they were going to die. And he told her not to think like that. But he was telling her to feel around the room for their cell phone so that they could call for help. And suddenly she remembered that she had scissors nearby. So she got those. She went over to Jonte and was trying to get him out of where he was bound. And that is when the man came back in. He pressed a gun to Jonte's head and said, "Didn't I tell you I don't have nothing to lose?" Jonte, who could see because the duct tape was off, refused to actually look at this man, closed his eyes, and told the man he still had not seen his face. The man then taped him back up once again and went back to assault his girlfriend again. Jonte said this time he could see out of his right eye, and he watched as this man tried to strangle his girlfriend with a cord and then with his hands. Then when that wasn't working, he cut her throat. And then he picked up her body and dropped it on the floor to make sure she was dead. And she didn't move a muscle. So Jonte believed that he had just witnessed his girlfriend's murder, and that he was next. Jonte was taken to the closet, and a rag was put over his face that smelled like gasoline. He then realized what was about to happen, and he said he thought, "I'm about to be dead, to burn up in this closet." He said he then saw the fire begin, and it shocked him when his girlfriend began screaming. She was still alive. She had been pretending that she was dead. Jonte told her to stop, drop, and roll and to find an area in the home that wasn't burning because she was out in the main area, whereas he was stuck in this closet. Jonte told her to escape, to find help, to do anything that she could to get out while he tried to kick open this closet door. But she said she wasn't leaving him. She was so determined to help him too, but then she realized that she had to get help for both of them. Jonte would later hear that his girlfriend actually opened the window, began calling for help, and climbed out. And during this time, Jonte was kicking the door open, and he actually had to bunny hop because he was still bound. He had to bunny hop to the window, and then it was too high up for him to actually jump out of, so he had to make a running start at it, and he continued to try to do this over and over while the fire was burning around him, and thankfully his girlfriend and a neighbor came over and pulled him out. At the hospital, Jonte said that he was shown a photo lineup, and that is when he picked out Jason Billingsley. He knew for a fact that that was him. He also said that his girlfriend had been released from the hospital. She too had survived. But they weren't the only two victims of the fire. There was actually a 5-year-old in the apartment who was being treated for smoke inhalation. She too was okay. But although this man could be identified and he had an arrest warrant, nobody in the public knew about this. No one knew to look out for this man, and he had not been apprehended yet by police. So 3 days later, Jonte would hear that this murder occurred. And then he began seeing photos of Jason Billingsley on the news, that he was a wanted man for murder. Jonte said that he began sobbing because he knew it could have been prevented and that she did not deserve this. The survivors say that they wish that the police would have done more to spread the word about this man. Now, prior to Pava's murder, Jonte even found that Jason had stolen his phone and was texting not only his mom, but a friend asking for money. So he knew that this suspect also had his phone. And he gave this information to the police. The police were said to be tracking it, but they still weren't able to capture this man. But now that Jason Billingsley is in custody for both the murder and the arson investigation that is so much more than just arson, Jason Billingsley has allegedly admitted to beating Pava LaPere with a brick and his hands when the police have questioned him. So prosecutors believe with his confession that he beat Pava, it is essentially a murder confession as well. But he has been denied bail due to concerns that he is a flight risk and he's going to undergo a suicide assessment. But he is now awaiting trial. Now, the Baltimore Police Department have defended their decision to not come forward with the information about the survivors, the arson attempts, the essentially attempted murder that happened before Pava. While he was supposed to be under surveillance, he ended up being able to murder somebody else.
You said Billingsley was being tracked, yet he was still able to commit another violent, heinous act. How is that so? And at what point do you weigh the community safety? This was a violent rapist who was roaming the streets of Baltimore, and the public had no idea. Could this knowledge have prevented Pava's death?
I'm not going to speculate whether it could have prevented her death, but what I know we did is as soon as we realized that there was a public safety, we had the press conference. The first incident on Edmondson Avenue was not a random act. Had it been a random act, we would have put out a flyer right away saying that this individual was on the loose committing random acts. We know pretty much why he went into that house on Edmondson Avenue and why he committed those acts. He worked at that building. He was familiar with the victims. I'm not going to say too much more because I don't want to talk bad about victims. But he was there for a reason. And it was, at that point, our detectives and everyone in the department decided that we didn't think at that point that he was committing random acts because we knew he had been out since October 2022, and we had no incidents that he has been connected to. We're going to go back and look and see if we have anything that he could be connected to. But at that time, we did not believe that he was committing random acts. We think he committed a targeted act on the victims that he victimized that day. If we made a mistake, I'd tell you we made a mistake like I did in Brooklyn. I don't think we made a mistake in this case. I think our detectives made the same decision we make every single time based on the facts and circumstances that we have. And as soon as we realized he had committed an act that seemed to be random, that we still don't know connections there yet, we put the flyer out, and just as we thought, as soon as he saw the flyer, he tried to elude capture and turned off all devices we were able to track him on. Hindsight's always 20/20. If I would have known that he was going to go and kill someone, we would have put the flyer out. But we had no indication that he was committing random acts. This was a targeted act that he went into that apartment that he worked in, the building that he worked in, that he had access to the apartment. He was allowed in the apartment. So there was no reason to believe that he was out committing random acts. Had we believed that, the flyer would have came out to everyone on September 20th as soon as we got the warrant.
And so they never believed that this man was going to go on to commit another crime, which that statement is baffling to me considering he did have such a long criminal record. And it was very obvious that this man needed some help and wasn't going to be easily rehabilitated. Does this make any sense to you? Because to me, I just don't understand why they wouldn't have wanted to catch this man. Even if they told the public and the news, this seems like a targeted attack, you are not in danger, but we need to find this man to get justice. That is what should have been done here, in my opinion. I don't understand why they just kept it completely silent, because you never know. Now, the police commissioner has since come forward to apologize, and at a press conference on October 4th, he said, "This has been bothering me for a week. The fact that the comments that I made were victim blaming, I tell you that I misspoke. The last thing that I ever want to do is blame a victim. No victim is ever at fault for a crime committed against them, especially this individual." He then agreed that they should have released Jason's name and picture when the first attack occurred. The mayor has said that moving forward, police will elevate significant incidents such as rape and arson to the commissioner's level so that he can weigh in on whether the public should be alerted or not. But to not let the public in on if they see this man running down the street, they should run the other way, or they should call the police to help them out, that just doesn't make sense to me that they couldn't have at least posted a bulletin of this man. Who knows, if Pava would have seen this on the internet, most likely she would not have opened that door for him that day. And her opening that door does not mean that she is at fault for this at all. She was being a nice person. This man took advantage of that. That does not put the blame on Pava in any way. I don't know, when I heard about this and I saw that the CEO, who is so beloved and so incredible, really it seemed, there's so much attention on her murder, and she does deserve that. She does deserve justice, but so does this couple who were essentially just ignored, and not a lot was being done in their case. If he had never murdered this other woman, would they have ever gotten justice? And that's horrible to think about, because no, we never wanted Pava to be murdered. She never deserved that. Let me know what you think. Is this something that, the Baltimore Police Department, they just made a mistake and, they don't deserve all the hate that they're getting? Do you think that they did all that they could do? I think in general, Jason Billingsley got off so easy multiple times, and to be released for good behavior, just to go on and kill and rape and do horrific things just because he was a good inmate. They said he was rehabilitated essentially and was allowed to go early. This case was a roller coaster, and I know that investigators are looking even more into cases from the past year that he has been out of prison to see if he's connected, because for him to go a year and then suddenly decide to start, committing all these crimes, very unlikely that he waited for all that time. And so I think that we're going to have even more cases coming out that are connected to him. Let me know your opinions down below. Am I being too harsh? Should inmates, even for sexual assaults, sexual predators, be allowed to be released if they are doing well in prison? I'm heated today, but don't forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay.